Hello and welcome to the newest episode of the Blue Corner. As always, I'm Mike, AsAlways, one half of Long Island's first ever MMA podcast, The Unknown Experts. So tonight's episode, we're going to get right down to the headlines, so let's get after it. Darren Till is unsure if he'll move to middleweight or stay at welterweight after his title loss this past weekend at UFC 228. I personally think he'd be best suited moving up to middleweight instead of staying at welterweight, seeing as middleweight's a more striker-heavy division, with the exception of Yoel Romero and a couple others. You get the likes of Costa, Whitaker as the champion, and a bunch of interesting matchups, Rockhold, Weidman, whoever comes up on top of that. So he should definitely consider moving to middleweight. This is his first defeat, and it was in a title match. So, he'll come back from this stronger. And with his height, especially, he should think about moving up in weight where you see if that reach still plays. On a side note, some people were talking about Till's height advantage being the reason, or one of the reasons, he was favored as the favorite in the matchup with Woodley, and that's just preposterous, especially since Woodley, when he does strike, favors his right hand and is an overhand right type of puncher. And if you've ever seen Roy Nelson fight or Chuck Liddell fight, you know that a taller guy is much more prone to eat an overhand right on the chin, and it's easier to hit him with it. So that's just preposterous right there, that whole argument. Tatiana Suarez plans to win the strawweight belt, then move up to flyweight and make a run at that belt as well, but has recently said that if she does not get a title shot in her next outing after her win over Esparza, she would favor a matchup with Carolina, who was just beaten by Jessica Andrade. So that's her plans at the moment, so we'll see what happens. Brendan Ward withdrew from Bellator 207 and announced his retirement after losing 3 of his last 4. Not so bad since, the 3 of those 4 were against the likes of Paul Daly and Fernando Gonzalez. Zabit has said that he wanted to get a submission to prove a point at UFC 228. Obviously, that point is that he needs to step up in competition. He definitely should get a top 10 guy next. The guy is not only the biggest featherweight you'll ever see, but he has skills for days. His hands, his wrestling, and now his jiu-jitsu comes into play. This guy is a monster. And who knows if it was the fact that Aljamain Sterling pulled off the banana split knee bar earlier that night, and he was watching backstage while warming up and figured, hey, I got that in my repertoire, as Brendan Schaub said, so he did the same when he had the position, or if it was just a coincidence. But it's a hell of a thing to see such a rare submission like that in the same night. And for anyone out there who's saying that, it's not a knee bar, you have to be in front to get a knee bar, that's ridiculous. You get a knee bar from any position that hyperextends the knee. You can get a knee bar from 50-50. Hell, when you go for a heel hook, you have to get a knee bar to get it done properly. You lock up the knee and then you attack the heel. Anyway, moving on. Apparently, Anderson Silva's living in a multi-million-dollar house in LA. I bet 9 out of 10 people who are hardcore MMA fans are shocked by that. I know I was. Why not Brazil? Seeing as he's basically a demigod there. Well, either way, good on Anderson. Hopefully, we'll see him back in the sport soon, or he'll officially hang it up. Who knows which way it'll go. 5 months after the bus attack, the Brooklyn bus attack, or Busgate, whatever you want to call it, Michael Chiesa is finally pressing civil charges against Conor McGregor, and has dropped hints at also suing the Barclays Center for their negligence on the security. This is the type of situation where don't be surprised if he doesn't also hint at suing the state of New York. That's the way it goes with civil suits 101, is you go after the perpetrator, then you go after the venue, and then you go after the state. That's basically how this game goes. And also, Chiesa's kind of fucking himself here. This is exactly how you can ensure you piss off your bosses, because one, you can't fight on any card this guy fights on for the next year while the restraining orders in place that was put in place by the court. So you're going to lose any revenue you could have gained. Look at Ray Borg. Ray Borg was just pulled from the 229 pay-per-view, which might be the highest grossing pay-per-view of all time. And it's not like he has pay-per-view points, but if he did, or anything, I mean, just being on the card alone is so much promotion that you're going to get paid more. So it's with Chiesa, unless he thinks his career is over and he'll never be a champion, which I doubt he thinks, this is just a bad idea to do a civil suit, especially after all this time. He should have done it from the jump, because the UFC already did tactical moves by booking these guys and having them fight immediately afterwards, so that they would have the last legal ground to stand on of the incident hindering their careers. The UFC is in the Conor McGregor business, so they're going to do what's best for him, because it's what's best for them. Moving on, Bellator is pursuing CM Punk. Let that sink in for a second. He's got one fight left on his 3-fight contract. It's doubtful the UFC will let him fight again in the cage after him losing in the two worst ways possible. One, the bullet to the head method of Mickey Gall subbing him nearly before the match started, and then fighting a photographer who basically, in most people's eyes, should have been able to put him away at any point, but couldn't or wouldn't. And so much so that Dana White said that Michael Jackson, the photographer, or Mike Jackson, whatever his name is, will never fight in the UFC again, which sucks because he's clearly more of an MMA guy than Punk ever was. Other news, Jose Aldo says that he was offered a short notice replacement bout against none other than Donald Cowboy Cerrone in Sao Paulo, Brazil, after Glover Teixeira was pulled from the Jimmy Manuwa fight there on short notice. Aldo says that he assumes the fight would have been at lightweight, 155 pounds, seeing as he's never fought at welterweight. It's not like he's fought at lightweight the past 10 years or in the US or UFC either, but that's a more reasonable idea. Obviously didn't come to fruition, seeing as Cowboy is booked to fight Platinum Mike Perry in UFC Denver at the 25th anniversary show. And Aldo, I believe, is fighting in Toronto at UFC 231. In Bellator news, Alima Leah McFarlane is going to defend her flyweight women's title against Valerie Letourneau at Bellator's first ever Hawaiian event in December 15th. Letourneau, the Canadian vet, last challenged for a title in the UFC, looking for strawweight gold in a 2015 loss to Joanna Schevchenko, the strawweight queen at the time. We used to just call her Joanna Champion because we couldn't pronounce her last name, so I guess we'll call her Joanna Former Champion from now on. Speaking of Joanna Former Champion, Schevchenko continues to hunt favorable opponents for her promised crack at the now vacant women's flyweight title after Nico Montano was stripped of the belt after missing weight for the first time. It's a whole other thing, but anyway, right now the word is Joanna, former champion, is the odds-on favorite to be fighting Schevchenko for the vacated flyweight belt. She has faced Schevchenko 3 times in Muay Thai matches, winning all 3 of them. So Schevchenko would like redemption and has been eyeing that matchup, as well as the UFC making more and more hints that it's their favorable matching in the for the flyweight belt. Uriah Faber is still in the USADA testing pool and won't rule out a possible return, even a couple hours ago saying further that he will most likely return if the cards align themselves, so we'll see what happens there. Basically, if TJ remains champion, he'll probably try to negotiate some deal where he'll have a one and done comeback fight to try to get that match with TJ, because that's enough of a rivalry there. Probably more so than it's probably less than they think it would generate, at least revenue-wise, but it'd still be fun to see. Ryan Hall and BJ Penn, we talked about last episode, how that a match between them was being targeted for November, December. Now we got a date. They will be fighting December 29th at the annual New Year's Eve UFC event, UFC 232 Cyborg versus Nunes. It's never too early to say, even though they're both black belts and BJ's a legend, Ryan Hall's going to get it done by submission, no question about it. Andrei Arlovsky has come out and said that he begged his manager for a spot on this weekend's inaugural UFC Russia card, where Andrei will be taking on Shamil Abdurakhimov. Shamil is 18-4 in MMA and 3-2 in the UFC. Andrei keeps going on these streaks of surprising wins, and then just shy of the title losses, essentially. Sooner than later, this will probably be his last run before he hangs it up, or at least goes over to Bellator, where they don't give a shit how old you are, or how concussed you are, or how chinny you are. It's still crazy to think that the UFC is going to co-promote with M1 Global after all that drama and all that never going to happen, all that fuck Finkelstein stuff Dana White had said. And we don't even get the fucking Fedor fight after all this is the best part about it. Oh well, hopefully he'll win the Bellator tournament and maybe have a retirement match in the UFC on Russian soil. It's the best we can hope for. Let's see, Jihoff Neal, coming off his possible KO of the year head kick win, is apparently back to his day-to-day life in between fights, where he waits tables. I mean, which is depressing. And no disrespect to him, but it says volumes about where our sport is, especially the Premier League that the UFC presents itself as. I mean, it's not like the kicker on the Miami Dolphins is a waiter or a grocery store clerk the other 6 days a week when he's not playing football. I digress. Golden Boy Productions just an hour ago released the Ortiz Liddell poster, and it looks like it is straight out of 2002. It looks like one of the posters from like UFC 35.5 or 35.5, Ice Cold, or UFC Meltdown. That short time where they would always have a subtitle to the pay-per-views, and Liddell would always be on the cover. It looks just like that. It's photoshopped to shit and airbrushed to hell. You just picture Oscar standing there doing a fucking bump of coke. Oh, it's beautiful. It's perfect. We're gonna put them everywhere. This will be the start. It's so fucking out of place with the current posters we're used to, at least. Now, our last bit of news, we got McGregor posting training footage for the first time in a couple months. It's got a couple of moments where he's doing some wrestling work, but he's being smart. He's not showing that he's focusing on the wrestling. It's mainly showing him, doing some sparring and bag work. It shows him dropping a couple guys with that left arm punch. But more importantly, in our final bit of news, we covered it before that he's doing zero promotion. He feels he's past it at this point, so no promotion other than a bit of commercials that are starting to air now. But he will be in the same room with Khabib for the first time since the bus incident, September 20th in New York City. They will have the official press conference for UFC 229, so be sure to tune into that, because that'll be one hell of a thing to see. He's got to do something big there if he doesn't want to do any other promotion. Well, this has been the Blue Corner. I'm Mike, as always, and as always, stay tuned. I got some stuff cooking. I'm sure you all do too. Me and Muka are trying to get back together real soon for the Unknown Experts reunion show. We're probably going to do a fight companion for the aforementioned Khabib McGregor UFC 229 card. So let's see if that works out. Thank you for watching. Love you guys and peace out.